Okay, I think we can begin. Hi, I'm Austin Maier. I'm an Associate Director of Connection Strategy at Digitas and currently lead connection strategy for one of our CPG clients. Across my clients' brands, we've been heavily focused on both how we can better connect with Gen Z and communicate our value to consumers broadly. Throughout this process, we've uncovered really interesting behaviors, insights, and white spaces. And today I'm going to walk you through some of the research we've done and ways that brands can action it. As we dive in, I will hit on each of these points more, but if you only take away 3 things from today, it's that Gen Z is generally more optimistic than other generations about the state of the economy. They care about value and are redefining how it's talked about in culture. And most brands aren't connecting with Gen Z on their terms. What this means for brands is that they need to ensure they speak to Gen Z about value with an optimistic tone and address their unique motivations. They need to tap into their language and tone, whether that's through the brand or using creators. And finally, they should audit the marketplace to see if they have a white space to win with Gen Z. The data we're going to build off of today blends Cassandra's Gen Z's values and value report with insights from various news sources and platform research we've conducted. When I talk about value, it's not just price. There's an emotional component to it too. We've developed this formula to identify how brands conceptualize value and communicate around it in the marketplace. Ultimately, consumers need to feel good about the product at the price they are paying. Most consumer brands need to build meaningful relationships with Gen Z now in order to future-proof their businesses. And doing so requires that brands speak to the moment. Currently, there's a lot of economic uncertainty as consumers navigate high inflation, high interest rates, and a potential recession. And in response, consumers are increasingly looking for more value. But how that manifests for Gen Z is different from what we see with other generations. They've grown up and entered the working world bouncing from one crisis to the next, so potential crises aren't rattling them the same as they are with other generations. This means that brands can't speak to them about value as if they were any other generation. So diving into the data, Gen Z is the least worried about a recession. A driving force for this lower level of worry likely stems from millennials and Gen X having more responsibilities and less of a runway to recover from economic hardship. And them being the least worried doesn't mean they're not worried about it at all. Over 60% of them are concerned. Another driving force for their lower levels of concern may be that they are saving the most of any generation, whether that's cutting their spending, delaying a big purchase, or selling things they no longer need. Fewer responsibilities may be enabling them to more easily cut back or reprioritize their discretionary spending. And this last piece here is what I find most interesting. Gen Z is hesitant to trade down to private label brands. They don't want what they perceive as a substandard product just to save money. This is significant as we know private label is winning market share across CPG categories with double-digit dollar growth in 2022. So that's what we know about Gen Z from what they tell us in surveys, but it's not the full story. While their outlook may be positive now, we are seeing Gen Z rack up credit card and buy now, pay later debt faster than any other generation. The buy now, pay later situation in particular warrants some extra attention, especially as the category grows rapidly. During the height of the pandemic between 2019 and 2021, the main lenders in the space grew their loans by more than 10x. And the percent of Americans who have used a buy now, pay later service has grown 15 points since then. There's an element of buy now, pay later that's positive. It gives more people access to the credit when they need it most and can help people manage the cost of a large purchase. But analysts are estimating that offering buy now, pay later at checkout increases average cart size by 30 to 50% and retail conversion rates by 20 to 30%. So buy now, pay later is not just helping consumers manage their spending better, it's encouraging them to spend more than they otherwise would. It's easy to see how frequent use of buy now, pay later services can snowball. Divvying up your fashion haul or grocery bill can take off the sting in the moment, but eventually all those bills will have to be paid. And consumers still risk late fees or marks against their credit scores if they miss payments. Brands need to pay attention because the buy now, pay later bubble bursting will likely have significant impacts on Gen Z's attitudes and spending habits. So how does this influence the way Gen Z navigates economic pressure and seeks out value? Gen Z is driving a cultural shift in how we discuss value. Saving for them isn't about cutting back on their spending holistically. It's about prioritizing the brands, foods, and trips that matter to them most. If your brand can win on the emotional piece of the value equation, your brand will have more pricing power with Gen Z consumers. They are finding novel ways to save where it's not just about cutting down their budgets and sticking to them. They're seeking ways to optimize and control when and how they spend. Everyone should be keeping an eye on what hacks and tips are trending and lean into them when your brand can authentically fit into the trend. And probably the most culturally relevant piece right now, Gen Z has leaned into dupes for products they love. If they can find a product that gives them enough value for a fraction of the price, they will trade down. That may seem like it cuts against the idea that Gen Z doesn't want to trade down to private labels, but it squares perfectly with how we think about the value equation. In some cases, spending for the brand name is worth it if the brand makes you feel good. But if the driving force for feeling good is that you're able to find that dupe, then that less premium or private label project can in fact win out. I see two ways brands can play into the dupe trend. If your brand is competing on price, then you can show up as the dupe. But if your brand is the subject of dupes, you can use this as an opportunity to recontextualize your value and show consumers why your price is justified. We just saw Lululemon do this with their dupe swap activation, where consumers could trade in dupes of their most popular leggings for the real thing. The brand reported that 50% of people who participated in the activation were new to the brand, giving Lululemon a true platform to recontextualize the value of their products. The other buzzword that's been floating around is de-influencing. Gen Z is constantly being told to buy things from brands, influencers, and publishers, and we know consumers crave authenticity. In a media ecosystem that's constantly telling you to shop, with creators and publishers often being paid for promoting the products or earning commissions on what they are telling you to buy, telling someone not to buy something is going to sound more authentic. While part of de-influencing is just telling people not to buy certain things, there's another angle that's about not needing to get the best of everything. Most of these videos involve creators showing how easy it is to ignore social-driven products or premium brands. But they're not just saying, don't buy this. The creators are telling people to not buy one product and instead buy another. On its surface, de-influencing sounds like a space that brands can't play in, but at its core, the trend is really about creator authenticity and not just hawking whatever product they are being paid to promote. Many Gen Z consumers want to hear that they don't need to buy the trendiest or most expensive products to have a good experience. So brands can tap into the de-influencing trend by focusing on the value and utility they bring to consumers. Make your message about more than just product RTBs and price points. Connect with Gen Z on how your product answers the emotional piece of the value equation. And something I think is really interesting is that while bouncing from one crisis to the next may make it seem like value is always relevant to Gen Z, media hype is driving the conversation around key value-related terms. So when the media began hyping up egg prices in mid-January, we saw a spike on TikTok for #inflation. We can expect that these media hype moments will make consumers much more receptive to value messaging. Brands that are agile and lean into them are more likely to win attention and share a voice. It's not just about what you say or how you say it. Talking about value at the right moment will make the message more relevant. And so what are brands doing about it? We do see some brands speaking to value in a very native way to Gen Z, whether it's showing private label products as dupes, connecting sales to self-care, or showing how one destination is just as good at a fraction of the price as a pricier destination. But we see many more brands who are just talking about value at a more basic level. Their messaging isn't tailored for Gen Z, and in most cases centers on pricing. It's really just delivering on the first half of the value equation. This Rayo's example on the left lands the emotional side of the value equation, but they aren't tapping into the language or aesthetics that will make this piece of content feel authentic to platforms or as relevant to Gen Z. The other two examples I have here are representative of what we see most often from brands when they try to speak to value. Food brands will call out how their products are perfect in a budget-friendly recipe, and food service brands will make deals or price the focal point of their message. This isn't to say that it's never the right direction to focus on these things, but it does leave an avenue open for competitors to come through with a strong, emotionally led value message. In a lot of categories, it's likely that brands still have a white space to connect with Gen Z in ways that are authentic to them. I'd encourage you to run audits for your brands and see if the opportunity is there. So how can we take advantage of this white space? While some brands are making the effort to connect with Gen Z on value, most are not. Speaking to Gen Z in ways they like to communicate is going to be a new muscle for many brands. And trends are changing faster than ever, so agility will be key. The trends we've identified, like dupes and de-influencing, are relevant today, but may not be in 6 months or a year. This is especially important as we know Gen Z is looking for brands to be authentic. Brands should not just try to mirror the way Gen Z and relevant creators engage on platforms. They need to identify ways their distinct voice can flex into Gen Z's aesthetics and language and build a testing culture that enables them to identify the best ways to tap into evolving trends without becoming a hello fellow kids meme. And finally, as we discussed, Gen Z has created specific trends to help them navigate the perma crisis they are living in. When brands talk to Gen Z about value, it needs to be optimistic. It needs to be about more than price. Messaging should center on the true value a product or brand brings to consumers' lives. We're in a challenging moment right now where consumers are expecting more from brands. They want more value, they want more authenticity. So as Gen Z navigates this moment, the brands that are able to communicate their value in more authentic ways are going to inevitably win out. Thank you so much for joining me today. This stream and deck will be available across Digitas' social channels.